It started in Ealdor, during the harvest, though I wasn't there to see it firsthand. Raiders on horseback, led by that brute, Canaan, storming into the village like they owned it. They demanded the entire harvest from Matthew, and when he admitted to holding some back to keep everyone from starving, Canaan struck my mother down for speaking up. He gave them a week to hand over the rest, or face worse. My mother, Hunneth, made the long journey to Camelot, arriving weary and bruised, seeking help from the court. She pleaded with Uther in the council chambers, explaining how Kenred's kingdom offered no protection. But Uther refused to send troops. Crossing borders would mean war, he said, his face a mask of regret he didn't truly feel. Gaius brought her to our quarters, where she collapsed into my arms, begging me not to return, fearing the danger. But how could I stay? I told Gaius I had to go, that she was my mother, and he warned me Uther wouldn't allow it, that using magic there could expose me. Still, I packed, determined, and when Arthur overheard in his chambers, he assumed I was just going home to care for her, thanking me curtly for my service as if I were already gone. I asked Gwen for a sword in the lower town, explaining the raids, and she insisted on coming too, her eyes fierce with loyalty. Morgana overheard in her chambers, declaring she'd join us. Women could fight as well as men, she said, and together we'd stand a chance. I tried to talk them out of it, but their minds were set. Gwen fetching armour and weapons from her father's forge. Back in our quarters, my mother made me promise not to use my magic, not to let anyone know my secret, her voice trembling with the weight of all she'd hidden from me. We set off that night, the four of us slipping out of Camelot under cover of darkness, camping in the woods where Gwen and Morgana teased me about my clumsiness with the fire. Arthur appeared then, joining us uninvited, claiming he couldn't let Morgana go without protection.
Put the sword down, Merlin, you look ridiculous.
Though I suspect it was more than that. We arrived in Ealdor at dawn, the village quieter than I remembered, and no sooner had we stepped foot there than Canaan and his men rode in again, crossbows drawn. He threatened to kill everyone if they didn't pay up, sneering at our meagre defences, then rode off with a warning that echoed in the silence. The villagers gathered, fearful, and Arthur tried to rally them in the square, insisting they fight back or forever live in fear. But Will, my old friend, stepped forward, arguing surrender was better than death, his voice bitter from years of resentment toward kings like Uther. Arthur countered that without resistance, Canaan would never stop, and slowly the village sided with him, leaving Will to storm off in rage. I followed him to the edge of the woods, trying to explain, but he accused Arthur of seeking glory at their expense, and me of hiding behind a prince. He knew my secret, of course, had always known, and demanded why I hadn't told Arthur. I said Arthur was my friend, that he'd come to help without being asked.
I trust Arthur with my life.
Is that so? So he knows your secret then?
But Will spat that a real friend would know the truth about me. That night, around the fire, Arthur asked why I'd left Ealdor for Camelot, and I mumbled about seeking a place to fit in, dodging the real answer, as always. The next morning, my mother pulled me aside in our old home, saying she thought Arthur liked me, more than as a servant. I laughed it off, insisting he'd have me executed if he knew about my magic, but she shook her head, seeing something I couldn't admit. Out in the woods gathering firewood, Will confronted me again, urging me to use sorcery against the raiders. Why hide it when lives were at stake?
I told him it was my destiny to protect Arthur, to help him become the king he's meant to be, and Will exploded, calling me selfish for putting a prince above my own people. Back in the village, Arthur began training the men with sticks and shields, basic moves to defend themselves, while Morgana argued in the square that the women should fight too, given how outnumbered we were. Arthur dismissed it, saying it was too dangerous, his chivalry as stubborn as ever. I overheard Gwen and Morgana talking by the well, explaining to each other why they'd come. For me, because I'd saved Gwen's father once, and helped Morgana with Mordred. It warmed me, knowing they cared, but the burden felt heavier, secrets piling up. That evening, Matthew, on lookout duty in the fields, was killed by the raiders, his body dumped back with a note promising massacre at dawn. Will blamed Arthur publicly in the square, shouting that this was his fault for stirring them up, then announced he was leaving before more died. I chased after him to his hut, begging him to stay, but he called me a traitor for not using my powers, for choosing Arthur over everything. In Arthur's makeshift camp, I explained Will's hatred stemmed from his father's death in some king's war, and Arthur confessed his doubts, fearing we'd all perish. I urged him to believe in the villagers, that they'd find the strength, and in him. Gwen confronted Arthur later by the fire, demanding the women be allowed to fight, and he relented, admitting they had as much right to defend their home. He gave a speech to everyone gathered, inspiring them with talk of freedom and courage, and for a moment, hope flickered. My mother confided her fears to me in our home that night, worried Arthur would discover my magic in the battle. I reassured her a true friend would accept me, though doubt gnawed at me. Arthur apologised to Gwen awkwardly for underestimating her, and she stumbled over words of trust, the air thick with unspoken things. The next morning, I tried to tell Arthur about my magic in the woods, my heart pounding, but Morgana interrupted, shouting that the raiders had crossed the river. We rushed back, setting the trap, the women lighting fires to fence them in, the men ambushing from hiding. The battle erupted in the village streets, swords clashing, arrows flying, chaos everywhere. I fought alongside them, using magic subtly to turn the tide. A shield here, a stumble there, but we were losing ground. Will returned then, saving me from a bandit's blade, his grin fierce as ever. As defeat loomed, I summoned a whirlwind with a spell, the wind roaring up to scatter the raiders, sending them fleeing in terror. Kanan stayed behind, dueling Arthur fiercely, until Arthur ran him through. Arthur demanded to know who conjured the wind, suspecting sorcery, but Kanan, dying, fired a crossbow at him. Will shoved Arthur aside, taking the bolt in his chest. We carried Will back to my mother's house, where he lay dying, whispering to Arthur that he was the sorcerer, that he'd created the wind. Arthur left, stunned, and Will turned to me, saying he did it so I could fulfill my path with Arthur, become part of something great. He died in my arms, and I wept, the loss cutting deep. At his funeral pyre in the fields, Arthur offered condolences, assuming I'd been about to reveal Will's secret before the battle, chiding me for not trusting him sooner. If only he knew it was mine. I said goodbye to my mother, her words echoing the dragon's, that Arthur and I are two sides of the same coin, and one day, the truth will come out when the time is right. We rode back to Camelot, the group quieter, the victory bittersweet. Another secret buried, another friend lost to protect this destiny. But seeing Arthur lead, seeing him care, it makes the wait almost bearable. Almost.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. If you like a bit of magic and near-death experiences, go on, hit like, share, and subscribe. Destiny insists.